Well, as I was introduced, I am a communications person. I started writing when I was like 14 years old. Got my first newspaper article published at that young age, and always knew I was going to go into some kind of communications. Interestingly enough, I wrote a novel when I was 12, and I typed it up on a typewriter. This was pre-computers, and mailed it to New York to a place called Vantage Press. And I got a letter back saying, hey, congratulations on a great manuscript. We'd like to publish it for only $10,000. And this was 1983, 84, something like that. Mom and dad said, nope. So that little manuscript kind of went back into a drawer and sat there for many, many years. And then my son started writing. And when he was 13, he wrote his first book. And we published it, self-published it through Amazon's CreateSpace. And then when he was 16, we published his novel. And he came up with the idea of starting a publishing company for teens because he didn't think it was fair. He was the only kid with a book. So we started up Sigma's Bookshelf, and to date, we've published 20 books. So I wasn't able to get my book published back in the day, but I've been able to help 20 kids. So I serve as the acquisitions editor, the proofreader. My husband does all the design and layout work, so it's really a family affair. And I'll tell you more about that kind of at the end. And we do run it as a nonprofit publishing company. It's totally free for the kids whose books get selected. And we're run by grants. So if anyone is looking for a charity support for Give to the Max Day in Minnesota, we'd love your support. And I have the information at the end. Anyway, so I guess here we go. So our presentation today is how to build your platform as an author and get people to want to read your book. And as everyone knows, the way to make that happen is people have to know about your book. There's no way they're going to buy it if they don't know it exists. So that's kind of what creating a platform is about. So first, I want to kind of tell you a little bit about my background, other than the publishing company. So a little bit about me. I was a TV news producer for 15 years before I got into marketing and PR. Most of my career was spent in Florida. I worked at three markets. I was in West Palm, Fort Myers, and Tampa, Florida. Then in 2002, we moved to Minneapolis. I worked at both KSTP and KARE 11. And then I kind of switched over to marketing in 2005. Got laid off from a job at the University of Minnesota Children's Hospital where I was doing marketing. And a book landed in my lap. Somebody needed help promoting it. And all of a sudden, RMA Publicity started up in 2009. So I've been pretty much working full-time with books since then. I have promoted more than 250 titles, everything from fiction, nonfiction, self-help, horror, supernaturals, you name it, I've done it, new age. And I love books, so it really ended up being kind of the perfect career for me. And since I started doing this, I've secured more than 2,700 media placements. Everything from local TV to right on up to like Good Morning America. I've had people on the Drew Barrymore show, Harry Connick Jr., back when he had a show. And really, it's all about the platform, which is what we're going to talk about today. And it's ways to get people to recognize who you are, what you have to say, your expertise. And just to continue, 118 media placements last year. I'm well on task to break that this year. I'm already over 100, and we still have a couple more months to go. And I arranged 27 book events last year. That I think is kind of cool because we're coming out of COVID, but pre-COVID, I was averaging more like 60, 70, 80 events a year. So getting them back there slowly. All right, so let's just jump right into it. What is an author platform? And I just kind of gave you a couple of definitions here. It's an established forum through which an author connects with his or her audience. And it's really also everything that you are doing online and offline to create awareness about your book. So what does it take? There's no magic button that you push or place that you can buy to make it happen. You have to actually invest your time and energy. It takes patience, perseverance, effort. And I have an author that I've been working with for over a year now whose platform has come together very nicely. And at the end of the presentation, I'll show you some of the results and some of the things that we've done. Quite honestly, it's all about starting very early. So for that author who was talking about just trying to get her books out and that publishing company as well, even though the books aren't out, now is really the time to start thinking about it. So here's that next slide. When should you start building an author platform? And I just kind of put a few thoughts down. Some people think it's around the time that you come up with your idea for your book. And I'm going to vote for that one. Others say it's when you begin writing your book or once the book is on the market. And quite honestly, once the book is on the market, it's already too late to start building a platform. You're going to lose a lot of opportunities. So my answer is the earlier, the better. The day that you come up with the idea for writing a book, that's a fabulous time to start thinking about building your platform. So the biggest really benefits of building that platform are that you're going to have time to build a fan base. Because in order to find people who are going to want to buy your book versus the other 100,000, 200,000 million books, whatever it is out there, is you're going to have to create demand. So a lot of times I'll approach a bookstore and they'll say, oh, well, what are you going to be doing to promote this event? And if I can say, well, this author has 5,000 followers on Instagram and they've been in the newspaper and we're going to have a newspaper listing and they're going to be on TV to promote the event, that's a heck of a lot better than, well, we're just going to let our friends know and hope that they come. So you really want to be able to tell and demonstrate to a bookseller that you have a platform built and that that people are going to want to come to see you. So the best answer to when people say, so how do you build a platform? It's all about knowing who your target readers are. And I'll ask this question every time I start working with a new author. So who is your target audience? And a lot of times the answer is anyone who can read, of course. And I tell them, sorry, you're wrong. If you've written a romance, somebody who's into sports is not going to care. They're not your target audience. You're going to want to go after people who are interested in romance. So that may be women, that might be people who are members of a book club. It's thinking about all the places that the people who you think are your ideal reader are spending time. And if you spend the majority of your effort trying to build this platform, figuring out how to reach those people, then you can't help but reach others, but you really need to focus on your target reader. So who would be that best person, the ideal person to be wanting to read your book? And then there's also a word called branding that kind of falls into it. The two kind of go hand in hand. What is your brand? Are you all about wholesomeness? Are you all about nature? You want to be able to figure out ways to communicate who your ideal target is for this book and what your story is all about and how it can really resonate with them. So here's kind of a slide that I put up, and I kind of gave away the answer a little bit before here, but who are your target readers? And again, like I said, a lot of people will tell me anyone who can read, and I say no, it's who's the best person. So for that children's book, it's probably going to be, you're going to want to write down teachers, librarians, kids, parents, educators in general, superintendents. Figure out who the ideal person is in that category. For a romance, it would be, like I said, those book club people, might be a mom's group. For a self-help book, or maybe a business book, let me say. For a business book, it would be people who are interested in careers in that particular area, so students. It would be other people who work in that area or want or aspire to further their careers. So that's a really good tool to actually write down who your ideal target audience is. Then you can kind of back into it and figure out how to reach them. When it comes to defining your brand, you can ask yourself, what are you an expert in? I'm an expert in cutting down buckthorn, or I'm an expert in nature. I'm an expert in technology, whatever it may be. Start writing down those words. And then what kind of follows along with, say, buckthorn? It could be trees, it could be naturalist, it could be parks. And as you start kind of writing down those words and doing the association, all of a sudden ideas are going to come to you about targets, places that you can connect with that would be ideal for your book. Also, I have experienced, this is what happened to me. I went through an Alzheimer's journey with my mother, or I had cancer, or my husband died of cancer. What has happened to you that you're writing about in that book? And again, it's word association. It's kind of just getting all that stuff down on a piece of paper that you can look at. and then figuring out who else has been affected by this that would be interested in the information I have. And again, they're not going to find you on your own. You have to, as the author, go out and find them. And once you're able to find them and communicate with them, then they're going to become your cheerleaders, your readers. So here are kind of examples of the kinds of contacts that should be on that list once you start kind of building it. The very first audience where you're going to build your author platform and your brand are people who know you. So when your book first comes out, you're going to want to do, say, a book launch party. Invite your friends, invite your family, invite your colleagues, people you work with. All of those personal contacts are going to be the cheerleaders for that book. They're going to be the ones who read it first and tell their friends and family that this would be a great book that somebody should check out. So you want all of them to know what you're going to be doing to promote it. So personal contacts. Influencers, that could be influencers in the traditional sense or online. If you're looking at, say, like a romance, who would the influencers be in that world? Would it be like Jenna Bush, who has a book club on one of the morning shows? She'd be an influencer. Oprah would be an influencer, right? So list kind of all the people that you think are influencers for the category that you're writing. And then the next step becomes figuring out how to reach them. Twitter is a really, I know when people are kind of down on Twitter now, but Twitter is actually a really good tool for reaching people that normally you wouldn't get access to, because you can just tweet something to them. They may or may not respond, but at least you can communicate with them and you know that it went through. So that's one way, real easy way to reach influencers. Also, bookstores, those can become people who are part of your platform, because when people come into a bookstore looking for a book, they're, hopefully the bookseller is going to want to let them know, oh yeah, I know about this great new romance written by a local author. So you have to contact them and let them know about the book. They're not going to find it on their own. Gift shops, schools, associations, those are other organizations. And this whole building the platform thing is something you should be doing well before that book is actually on the market. Because if you do all this work on the front end, well before you actually are getting to the point where you're doing the final edits and proofreading and picking your paper and all that, then you're going to be able to communicate with this audience all along the steps of the way. You can do a book cover reveal to everybody on this list. Let them know that the book is coming. And this is kind of a way to build your expectation for an upcoming title. If you do this, then chances of somebody actually, buying that book when it becomes available are going to increase exponentially. Here are a couple of tools. This is kind of a little bit of summary. Here's some tools to get you started. That list of your already, established contacts, email these days seems like it's best. Sometimes I actually like to put something in the physical mail too. I just recently did a campaign for a client where we sent a brochure to educators, letting them know about his novel. And, people don't expect to see stuff about books in the mail anymore. So that's something kind of novel and different to do. But email, of course, is also very efficient. Once you have that list of the people, organizations, companies, bookstores, and everything else, then, that's going to be who you're going to communicate out to. And another really effective tool to use along the way is creating a marketing plan. This I find with a lot of authors I work with, it's something they don't think of until the book is actually out on the market. But if you take the time to build a marketing plan for yourself as you're working on building your platform, it's going to be a lot more effective. So here are just kind of a couple of things I'm going to tell you about marketing plans. The information I'm going to give you is basically what, say, like a Barnes and Noble book buyer is looking for. When you want to try to get your book into, well, here, let me back up. A lot of people will distribute these days through like Ingram Spark or Amazon or whatever, print on demand. And you're on barnesandnoble.com, but your book is not on the shelves at a store. In order to actually get it onto the shelves at a store, it needs to be presented to the store managers or to a book buyer at the corporate level. And they're going to want a marketing plan, because they're going to want to know what it is that you as a publisher, as an author, are doing to actually pull those books off the shelves. You want to drive traffic to come to their store. So when you're putting together a marketing plan for them, here's kind of what they would like to see. A story synopsis, a short bio of the author, author biography, who your audience is and your markets. And again, this kind of comes back to who is that target reader? Is your audience going to be for that children's book? It would be educators, it would be teachers, it would be parents, students, PTA members, things like that. Markets would be schools, libraries, school libraries, conventions, conferences, Minnesota Education Association, different things like that. So they're going to want to see all those different organizations that you're trying to contact. Key selling points. What are the takeaways? If somebody reads that children's book, are the kids going to learn their alphabet? Are they going to learn about nature? What are the takeaways? In a lot of the school districts, here in Minnesota, we have the kind of the core curriculum where there's certain things that the teachers need to teach. Do some research into that and find out if your book touches on those core curriculum messages. Like they're looking for ways to make sure that the kids are doing word association, things like that. So figure out how your book actually applies to things that people are looking for. And then this is something a lot of people don't realize. You need both 3 competing titles and 3 professional reviews. So those Amazon reviews aren't going to do anything for you. They need to be like a professional level review, like a newspaper or library journal, Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, Book Page, Book List, those kinds of things. And these days, those organizations actually make it pretty easy for you to get a book review. You can actually purchase one. It's a lot of money to buy a Kirkus. I think they're $575. But if you're real serious about wanting to get your book onto the shelves at a Barnes & Noble, then that's a step that you would probably want to take, is to get those professional reviews. Another way to go about it would be, if you're, say, trying to do a children's book, get some professional teacher types to do the reviews for you. And then you can kind of get around that and not have to buy them from somebody. And then you also want a publicity and promotion plan included. So what it is that you're going to do from a PR point of view to drive traffic and raise awareness about the book. What else needs to be there? Your target audience. Again, we talked in the beginning about who is the target audience and how are you going to reach them. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to do all this social media stuff. But I really caution you to not rely exclusively on social media. Also do traditional, which is like the newspapers, radio, TV, blogs, things like that. Because if you focus exclusively on social media, there's a lot of opportunity to get lost because there's so much competition. Yet once you, say, get a front page story in your local newspaper, then the potential is that people will see that and really take you seriously because they know that you had to get past a gatekeeper to get into the newspaper. Not everybody gets published, but anybody can be doing the social media and online. So that's kind of the differentiator. So I always recommend to my authors that they do both, not one or the other. Okay, at this point, I can take some questions. And I'm going to kind of conclude with 5 steps, kind of to building the platform and kind of repeating, kind of what I've already said. So does anybody have any specific questions at this point?
I noticed that Ron put in the chat, I seem to remember Rachel had a multi-page questionnaire that helped define my marketing plan. Is that still available?
Yep.
Maybe only to clients.
Yep, that's definitely something that I can help you guys with. It's, again, kind of the same thing I was talking about, is who should be reading this book? Who would enjoy it the most? What are your goals with the book? Why did you write this story? And as you're answering those kinds of questions, then it's going to be pretty apparent to you who your target audience is. For instance, with Ron's latest book, Ron, you want to kind of be my guinea pig? We'll talk a little bit about Abraham's story. Ron, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the book, and then I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I was just writing another question, but yeah,
Gotcha.
my third book was a biography about a friend of mine who had a unbelievable life in Liberia where he survived by multiple miracles and then eventually made it to the US, and his life over here has been equally challenging and interesting, and he seems to survive by just kind of constantly smiling and always being a good person, and it's he's kind of remarkable, and he never gives up. Anyway, that was my book, and so so we've done the part where we tried to connect with all of my friends and all of Abe's friends. It's interesting. He used to work with the union, and he's probably sold 12 books just to union members, which is curious. And so, in addition, though, you have to kind of figure out who would be most interested in that kind of a book. And since he was from Liberia, one of the targets we've had are the Liberian organizations in Minnesota and beyond. My publisher in this case was one of our board members, Josh, works for Calumet Editions, and they're doing an experiment with me where because there's just dozens, maybe 50 Liberian organizations throughout the US, and what they're trying to do is figure out a way to have Facebook ads which target those particular organizations. Like there's one Liberian organization that has something like 5,000 members. And so they're trying to figure out how they can do Facebook ads, which only go to those people, so it doesn't cost as much, or an Amazon ad. So you're not spending money for competing with 900,000 other books, but you're competing with people and looking for the people who might be most interested. It remains to be seen whether that technique will work. I don't know. What do you want to add anything to that, Rachel, and how?
Yeah, well, I think, when we first started kind of working on a marketing plan for Abraham's book, we were thinking about who would be the ideal reader. And we thought, hey, it's anybody who has a connection to Liberia. So we started making a really long list of all the different organizations, both in Minnesota and all over the country, actually. And then we put together a promotional feature article about the book that basically tells kind of the backstory about how the book came to be and Abraham's story. And then we started physically mailing that letter, a cover letter, and that article out to all these different organizations. Unfortunately, we got a bunch of bounce backs, but of the 30, I think probably at least 20 of them 22 of them did go through. I never actually got anybody calling me or asking about the book, but I know for a fact that we reached 22 different organizations all over the country. So we're creating awareness about the book. We've also done some work on LinkedIn, where we're connecting with people on LinkedIn user groups and notifying them about the book. There was a story in one of the local papers about the book. So we've been able to use that to, help connect with people. But it's all about, you can't just expect to do it once and have everything work. You have to continue to promote. So what Ron has been doing is these Facebook ads lately with his publisher Calumet. And I'm very hopeful that those will work, because those are the exact target audience, the people who actually have Liberia in their, in their username, or somehow in their it's somehow connected to Facebook. So they're listed that's one of their interests. So we're serving ads directly to the people who are our target audience. And that's kind of one of the cool things about the Facebook and the Twitter advertising and things that you can do now is you as a consumer can, target. You don't have to go through a big PR agency to do it anymore. So the individual can actually do it now. So
Okay.
Anything else, Ron, or did I cover that well?
I would comment that I mean, I actually enjoy writing more than trying to market. I'm sort of introverted, and so working with somebody who actually is a publicist and who can make cold calls and help you out, I think is useful. The other thing is, I don't think I'm persistent enough. It takes time and kind of continual effort as an author to get a book to take off. If you're new, if you're famous, it's a lot easier. But so I'm really spending most of my dream time and thinking time, worrying about the fourth book, which is, which is something I hope to get done by, next June or next December. And so the problem is that you're kind of competing with yourself, and and I think that's one of the things you have to deal with somehow when you're an author. And you have to, as an author, you do have to be kind of the primary marketing and salesperson. I don't think even the big publishers do that for you. I don't know. Do you know of anybody, Paul, that who will help you sell your book and take it over, that part of it over? I don't think so.
Well, here, I was going to say, maybe we should get to some of these other questions here. Scott, I see your hand. Let me do a couple that were in the chat first. So Stephanie was wondering about, you mentioned physically getting your books in Barnes & Noble. How do you actually find out who the corporate buyers are? How do you get to those people?
You pick up the phone and you look at the website on barnesandnoble.com and you find a phone number on there. You call the main office and ask. The person that I used to send things to was Evelyn Velazquez, and she's not there anymore. So I haven't been able to actually track down the name of a buyer. But what I have done, kind of going in the back door, I have a very strong connection over at the Barnes & Noble in Minneapolis. And he's been kind of helping me out by, I put my materials together and he's been forwarding them through kind of the channels to get stuff to the right people for me. He won't tell me the name of the buyer anymore, but I know that eventually I'm going to trip across it. So what I would recommend if you just want to try to do it on your own is go to that website for barnesandnoble.com. And there is a phone number on there for their corporate office. And what they'll probably do is they'll give you an email address. They won't give you a name, but they'll give you an email address. And then you can put together your marketing plan and send it to them. They also require that you send a physical copy of the finished book. So I would recommend just using that address that's on their website and just say to book buyer in the nonfiction category, I am writing to provide you with a marketing plan for this title. And then you include the marketing plan and the book. And I would say probably 6 to 8 weeks later, you should get a physical letter in the mail or email if you provide an email to them. And they'll tell you if they're accepting the book or if they're turning it down. If they're turning it down, then they'll tell you your book is available or is eligible for barnesandnoble.com. And it's like, that's great. Thanks. It's already there. But
I've also heard, I've also heard that they're trying to take the direction now as a company to go a little bit more local. So you might have luck just approaching the actual store manager saying, hey, I'm a local author, and trying that route as well.
Yeah, that will help you get, like, a lot of the stores have a local author table. And if you do go to your local store and approach the store manager and your book is available for distribution through Ingram and it's returnable, chances are good that they'll say, oh yeah, we'll order it in and put it on that local author table. This whole extra step I was telling you about with sending in the book and the marketing plan to corporate, that's if you want to get it more widely distributed, not just in your local store.
Yeah.
Pretty much any book that, as long as it's available through Ingram and returnable, you can go in and do a store event at a Barnes & Noble. I do caution you though, if you do a store event, typically they're going to order 20 to 30 copies. And if they don't all sell at that event, they're going to return them at your expense. So the way around that is when I go in with my publishing company and do author events at stores, I kind of make a deal with the store manager where I'd like to purchase whatever's left at the end of the day. And they'll give me a good 25 or 30% discount. And then I'll just, take the stock, whatever it is. I'll eventually get my royalties for those books. But I at least don't have to pay for the privilege of having them returned. It's kind of a wash in the end, but that's a really good way around having to worry about the returns. I've had so many authors I work with who have just, all of their profits have gone to paying for shipping and returns.
Yeah.
And that's not cool.
Yeah. Okay. So Joni is also wondering, for your idea for the 3 professional reviews, does an author endorsement work here or not?
Yes.
Yes.
They're kind of interchangeable. If you've already got an endorsement, use that for a review.
Okay. Scott, you want to go ahead with your question?
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah. So Rachel, thanks for doing this presentation for us. This is really very interesting. So as an independent publisher, I'm also a writer, but I'm also an independent publisher. So obviously the first thing, we look at when an author submits to us, is the literary quality of the submission and sort of the price to play. But what would you suggest might be some of the do or die author platform items, that if they don't already have these things in place, might be a big red flag, for potentially, rejecting, the submission?
Well, one thing to look at is, do they have any kind of presence online? If they have zero presence online, there's no Facebook, there's no LinkedIn, there's no Twitter, there's no Snapchat, there's none of that. That means that they don't have any kind of following outside their own circles, right? So that's kind of a red flag right there. That tells you that who's going to want to buy their book if they don't have any kind of following. That's one thing to concern yourself about. Because one question, in my case with my publishing company, I don't ever worry about how many books we're going to sell, because that's not our mission. Our mission is to empower kids to hold a book in their hand that they wrote. And some of our titles have done really well. I actually had one kid, we launched her book at the Rosemont Writers Festival back in March. I got a KARE 11 morning show interview that Saturday morning for her. By the end of the weekend, we had sold 205 copies of this young lady's book. She didn't have any kind of platform. She just had her friends at school and her parents. But 205 books sold because she was on TV. That's pretty darn cool. Have any sold since then? 2, 3, not much. But that was a pretty nice launch. I've had a couple of other titles that right out the bat, 3 or 4 months into it, they've sold over 500 copies each. I think our record is 750. And then it kind of reaches a plateau where, no more sell. But if you're an actual traditional publisher and your goal is to keep those copies, not just on your front list, but your backlist moving, the author needs to be out there doing promotion, keeping the word out about their book and about their platform, and trying to continue to get people to go into the stores and order it, or go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. So you need to make sure that that your authors are going to be continuing to promote the book. And a lot of authors think that that's the publisher's job. They think their job is done once they've written it. But that's not the case. The author, if they want their books to sell and they want to make those royalties, they need to put in the work and effort. And so kind of what this is all about with the platform is doing the work on the front end before that book comes out, so that you've already got a built-in audience for it.
So as a follow-up question, Rachel,
Yes.
then, well, let's say they have a marginal, a marginal online presence or social media presence, a couple of hundred Facebook friends, something like that. What would you say, roughly would be the time frame that they could build a viable presence that would drive some sales?
Well, if you're starting to engage with them and they've already got a little bit of a network going, they need to start talking about the fact that, hey, I'm looking for a publisher and I think I found one. My book is going to be hopefully coming out in 6 months or whatever it may be, and start kind of talking about it early on in the process, before you even have that cover, or you have, you've even gone through the editing. So if they're starting to encourage, or to let people in their network know that they've got a book coming early on, they're going to continue to build the desire to pick that copy up. So then what you can do is a cover reveal. So say when you've got the cover designed, even though the book's still not coming out for several more months, do a cover reveal for all of those people. And you could do that as a pre-sale kind of, hey, my cover reveal party is happening this December for my book scheduled for release in June. Be among the first people to get an early peek. And if you pre-order a book, we will be including a free drawing or a free, whatever it may be with, your purchase. So you get those early adopters who are going to buy the book, right, 6 months even before it comes out. And then you've already kind of started creating demand, because that those people have already bought it. And then the next step is, once the cover has already been finalized and you're getting closer, then you can start planning the launch party and start selling tickets to come to a launch. The one thing that COVID kind of did for us was make it possible to do these cool virtual releases that I've done a number of them very successfully. And you can pre-sell tickets to come to your launch party. And so people will buy the book in advance. Sometimes you can get them to buy it through Amazon. If you want to try to be an Amazon bestseller, you can try to sell a whole bunch of books through Amazon, sending them the pre-sale link. Other times you can go like through Eventbrite and actually sell it if you're selling direct. But different opportunities that you can try early on, well before the book comes out, to create awareness and drive traffic and get people excited about it. That I think is a very useful tool.
So Stephanie, you had your hand up too. Do you want to go ahead with your question?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a follow-up on the Barnes and Noble. So I just wanted to say thank you for presenting this, because you bring up some interesting points. And a lot of times my clients don't want to waste time. Each client has a different goal or directive in their marketing. I do books from everything from, a grandparent who wants to have a Christmas gift for their family and a memoir, all the way to kids' books, business books. So I find myself kind of not wanting to waste clients' time in a certain direction or another, but it sounds like, based on what you've presented today, this is really a standard platform that no matter what genre or what author goals may be, this is really kind of the nuts and bolts that you say really everyone, is that correct? Everyone should really have this.
You know what, I think at this point, let's kind of move on to the next part of my presentation, because I've kind of broken it down a little bit, talking about what people in different genres should try to do. Are there any other questions before I move on?
I think it's a good idea to move on, and then we can probably get back to some more questions.
Okay, so here we go, kind of in a summary, the 5 steps to building a solid author platform. Number 1 is you have that written marketing and PR plan. You know what you're going to be doing to promote this book. Number 2 is you have a website. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just have my book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. People will find it there. Yeah, they'll find that and about a million other things there. You're not going to be able to keep an audience on your Amazon author page or your Barnes and Noble page, because there's way too many distractions. There's other things that they're looking at. I think every author needs to have some kind of a website presence. It doesn't have to be anything too fancy. And it can also, when you want to sell your book, you can link them right to that Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But by bringing them to your own website, you are being able to provide them with all the cool things that they're going to get when they, come and pick up a copy of your book. So on your homepage, you'd have basically the elements you should have are basically a homepage where you're talking about, what the book is about. You're about the author, so they can relate to you. Events, so you can preview the upcoming events you have. And as you're getting those media hits, you can kind of list them on a news page. And it can be a real straightforward website. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy. It can totally be static. But bottom line is you need a website. Present yourself as an expert. And the ways to do that are to blog, to get yourself interviewed for articles, different things like that. And sharing your expertise, here's some tactics. You can write articles and submit them to different publications. You can blog, you can speak, you can teach. I do all of the above for my business and also for my son's little publishing company. I've been into probably about 50 different schools throughout Minnesota and Wisconsin, teaching novel writing workshops. And for every novel writing workshop that I do, I charge a speaking fee. And basically my speaking fee is the cost of a set of books. So for every school I go into, they pay me, I think we're up to about $200 now. And I leave behind 20 books. So sometimes I'll spend all day there. Sometimes it'll just be one quick session. But either way, every single time I go to school, I'm guaranteed to sell 20 books. And so that's, I'm sharing my expertise, and I'm also selling books by charging a fee for sharing my expertise. And I found that kids aren't going to, when I go into schools, it doesn't make sense to try to sell books, 20 different books to schools or to students, in the classroom. Sometimes they'll send a note home saying, hey, this author's going to be coming in, or this publisher's coming in, and here's the latest book. But It just makes more sense to just sell them to each of the schools that's what I do. But in the case of, say, an author, if you're going into a school, you could charge a speaking fee of $250, $500, whatever it is, and include a couple of books or whatever, or require them to buy a certain number of books. Anyway, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent. So share your expertise in these different ways. Serious about social media, and you see all these, logos. There's a gazillion logos there. That doesn't mean that you need to do every single one of them. I strongly recommend that authors select one or two and be active on those, and don't worry about the rest of them because there's way too much noise. What I consider the need to have social media is to be out there, to have a presence, so that if people look you up, they can see, oh yeah, this person is legit. They actually are doing stuff. They're an author. They have stuff out there I can see on the internet. Facebook, I think, is a real straightforward, easy one, totally free to put up a page. Excuse me, hang on, I think I need a drink here. Much better. Okay. And then you can actually, if you want to advertise on Facebook, you can target your audience and advertise using Facebook. That's the one that I prefer. It's easy, straightforward, and I've had some good success with it. I haven't really tried doing any kind of advertising with Twitter, and I don't think I'm going to. And I have not jumped onto Snapchat or Instagram or any of the others, but Facebook is the one that I choose. And then here's kind of with the magic button. I was telling everybody I'm going to kind of give you some ideas on how to establish yourself as an expert by category. So if you're doing fiction, you can teach, offer workshops, seek opportunities to present at conferences and author events. Here in Minnesota, we have the Twin Cities Book Festival every October and the Rosemont Writers Festival every March. There's also the Deep, I think it's called the Deep, somebody will help me here, I can't remember, the one in Mankato. There's a Mankato Book Festival. There's also one up in Hackensack in Minnesota, northern Minnesota. So all of those different opportunities for authors to speak and participate in conferences or get tables at workshop or at book festivals. You can blog, and if you're going to blog, I strongly caution you to make sure that you are going to commit to it, because nobody wants to start paying attention to a blog that's only going to happen once every 6 months. If you think you're going to be putting out a lot of information and you have lots to share, and you're going to do come up with a schedule where you're going to do regular blogs, then do it. Otherwise, don't. And then you can share knowledge gained through articles, press goes by my marketing plan that I provided for her. And every so often, like October was National Polio Awareness Month. Both items had something to do with her novel. And so we got some pretty good attention in October for that. Taking a look at nonfiction, kind of similar, share knowledge that you've gained from your research through articles and press releases. Seek out conferences where you can speak, put out regular press releases and blog. Poetry. A lot of people I've worked with a few poets over the years, and they don't realize that if you're a poet, you can actually lead workshops and talk about what you do. And community ed is a really fabulous place to go for leading poetry workshops. There's actually a pretty good demand for that kind of thing. You can also do bookstore events and speak at schools. High schools in particular there's always part of the units that they do is working in poetry. And so I've had the opportunity to get some authors that are poets into schools. And then here's kind of the author platform I was going to give you an example. So Judith Brenner is the author of The Moments Between Dreams. And her book launched this May 17, but we started working like almost a year in advance. So she launched a professional website, I think probably in about October of 2021. She began her Instagram post in August, just kind of announcing that the book was coming, launched May 17th. In Instagram, when she started doing that, she only had about 100 followers. Today, she's up to 4,000. She started Twitter with 20, and she's up to 400. And she just redid a Goodreads giveaway for her book. And I think I'm pretty confident that a lot of those Instagram, Twitter folks that were informed about the Goodreads went over there and signed up for it. And she had over 3,000 readers that went and asked for a free copy of her book. And she just sent me the photographs the other day of her actually mailing out I think it was like 20 winners. So she mailed the books out the other day. And so here's kind of a look at what her investment was. That's a lot of work. She did the majority of it. She tells me there were about 100 hours invested in time as far as all the different things that she's done. She attended webinars. She studied other author platforms to kind of get a feel for what they were doing in her category, see things that she wanted to emulate. And she also spent about $1,000 on her website. And she sent, being honest here, she spent $1,600 with me. She bought a launch package from me, and I started working with her like 6-7 months in advance and took her all the way through the launch, and we're still working together today. So that was her PR investment that she's done. Any questions at this point?
I've got one that I want to interrupt with. Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about like how does the approach differ between fiction and nonfiction? I feel like it's really easy to establish yourself as an expert with nonfiction, but can you talk about like what can fiction writers do here?
Well, in Judith's case, what we did is we shared her personal story. So that is her inspiration for this novel. So the basic story is there's this woman who gets married really young and ends up with an abusive husband. And right around the time, this is kind of set around Vietnam. So he's about to be sent away to war. Their first child is born and she has polio. And so there's a lot of stress on this new mom. Her husband has been abusing her, and here she is now trying to take care of this disabled child. And the whole story is actually based on her own family experience. She had a grandmother that was basically loosely based on, the character's loosely based on her grandmother. Her grandmother had been in an abusive situation, and her own mother is the one that actually had polio. So, her mother or her grandfather was her natural grandfather, I guess, was the abusive one. The one who she knew growing up was a second husband who wasn't this horrible person. But, she loosely based it on her own personal story. And so when we put together her marketing materials, we put that story out there. So this is a story of domestic abuse and about the polio epidemic from the 50s. And by the way, this is based on a true story. So we actually centered all the promotion kind of around her and what she had to share. We just did a big campaign for October with Domestic Violence Awareness Month and also with Polio Awareness Month. And we did an event at one of the Barnes and Nobles with Cornerstone, which, if you guys are familiar, it's an organization that helps women who are victims of battered spouse syndrome and such. So somebody from Cornerstone partnered with us at the event and handed out brochures and answered questions and things. And so, yes, it's a novel, but it's got some kind of concept that could be connected to real life. So that's how we've promoted this particular title. That's not always going to be the case with fiction. Sometimes fiction is totally made up, but a good way to be able to do something with a fiction book is, where is it based? Is it based in Minnesota, northern Minnesota? Well, in that case, why not go after like the Duluth market and say, here's a story you guys need to hear about. It's, set in your hometown. It's loosely based on a visit to this park or whatever it may be. So it's kind of finding that hook or the connection to reality, even though it's fiction, and utilizing that as a promotional tool. Because remember, what I always tell people is that the story is the story. When you're approaching media, it's not about the book. The media does not want to promote a book or give you free airtime to do an advertisement. What they're looking for are stories. And you as an author are a story maker, a storyteller. So people are going to want to interview you and find out about your inspiration and why you wrote this book and who this book you think is, who would it appeal to, and why should they interview you. And so as a publicist, that's kind of my job, is to figure out the story behind the story and promote it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, Alfred, I know you put a bunch of questions in the chat. Do you want to give us your most pressing question right now, or your favorite question for Rachel? Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Let's see.
Do that there. How's that now?
Good.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So on number of people have told me that Minneapolis has become a major publishing center alongside New York. Okay, is that true? And if it's true, how can we aspiring writers to take advantage of that?
Well, I would say yes, Minneapolis has actually kind of been known as the, the Midwest equivalent of New York. It's like actually a lot, if you know about the history of the publishing industry, it was actually kind of born here in the Midwest. And then somebody decided that New York would be better suited for a place to promote literacy and literature, and a publishing company that started kind of over here moved out over there and then brought all these people out to New York. So New York became the mainstream or main place for literary. But we have amazing publishers. There's there's so many publishers here. There's let's see, for of course right now you put me on the spot. They're escaping me. Somebody jump in and tell me the names of the publishing companies. Milkweed, Calumet. Anybody else shout it out?
Grey Wolf.
Grey
Grey
Wolf.
Wolf,
Yep.
yeah, I was trying to think of
Coffee
that.
House.
Coffee House.
Coffee House Press, right? Yeah, so these are all traditional publishing companies. There's also a number of hybrid literary publishing companies here. Wise Ink and Beavers Pond Press are two of the more popular ones. And so there's also a lot of authors here in the Midwest. And so one way to tap into it is to maybe, you're involved with this organization, which is fabulous. There's also the Midwest Independent Publishing. There's an actual publishers association. I get emails from them all the time about their meetings. It's actually the booksellers. That's Midwest Independent Booksellers Association. So there's that group that you can go to their meetings. They do them, I believe, currently both virtually and in person at in Minneapolis at the Loft. And then there's also these events that happen, the Twin Cities Book Festival in October, and then the Rosemont Writers Festival that happens in March. And then there's a Rosemont Country Art Fair that happens also in October, and that Mankato Deep Valley one I was telling you about. So it's, kind of looking around and getting involved with the different organizations that are promoting literary. The Loft is a really great resource. There's stuff happening there like all the time. So check out the Loft Literary Center's website. They have an events page that I actually post a lot of stuff to when I have my authors doing events. So people are always coming there looking for stuff.
Okay, and Michael is wondering about blog posts. Do you have a recommended minimum or maximum size or ideal frequency for blog posts?
I think weekly, if you can manage it. It doesn't have to be like a full-fledged, 2,500 word article. You can do 300 words, you can do 500 words. Just basically content that's of interest to your target audience. So for example, say you have a nonfiction book about Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's Awareness Month is October. Then what you're going to want to do is make sure that you hit things really hard in September and October, kind of leading up to that. Holiday season's coming up, and you have how do you help a loved one make it through Alzheimer's? Write something that's appropriate for that. So that could be like something you would do for November. You don't have to recreate it for December. January, new year, new beginning. What are the signs of Alzheimer's? What should you be watching for in your family member? Kind of think like you're an independent journalist. What kinds of stories would people be looking for at certain times of the year? And then you can blog about it. Judith is a wonderful writer. She, this author of The Moments Between Dreams. She blogs all the time about different things related to her book and unrelated to her book, and about publishing in general. When she learns something or she comes across a cool article, she'll blog about that. So it doesn't have to only be about your book. It can also be about sharing your knowledge and information with people in the circle. And what you want to do is, again, continue to contribute to that blog regularly, because once you build up a following, you want them to continue coming back for more. If there's no more, then they're going to go away.
Okay, Joni is wondering, so about Judith again, does Judith feel her Goodreads giveaway leveraged into enough sales or any kind of benefit for that Goodreads giveaway?
She hasn't given me any of the specifics about what the Goodreads giveaway did, but I will tell you she did it, well after her launch. Remember her launch was back in May, and she just did that Goodreads giveaway just like a couple of weeks ago. So here we are, in November. I think she did it at the end of October. So again, she spent the time building that platform and getting people to be interested in the book first. And I know that she's regularly selling books every week. Obviously it's not quite as many as it was in the very beginning, but if you're able to continue to sell that book, even though it's been out since May, here we are in October and she's still selling several books a week. That tells me that that's successful.
Yeah.
When a lot of the authors first kind of come to me, they'll be like, I'll ask them, what are your goals? I want to sell 100,000 books. And I will tell them, you know what, that's extremely tough to do. If you want to sell 100 books, you're going to need to have a big marketing plan. You're going to need to buy advertising in the major newspapers. You're going to need to buy commercials. You're going to need to really create huge awareness, because in order to translate, to 100,000 sales, you need to reach those maybe 1 million people in order to translate to get that 10% or whatever. So it's starting small and kind of building is really the key. With my publishing company, Sigma's Bookshelf, since we started up in 2017, we've sold about 5,000 books. That's not huge, but the majority of my sales have actually been to schools and libraries. Probably average about anywhere from 100 to 200 per family or per book, that the family and friends and such buy. But my goal and the way that I'm continuing to sell books is by going directly to my target audience, which is where are the kids hanging out who'd be interested in reading these books? Schools and libraries. So if you focus the majority of your efforts on your target audience, that's how you're going to be able to build your sales and such.
Okay, it looks like I missed a question from Erica. She said, my book New Moon's Family was on BNN, so I assume BNN.com for a while, but it disappeared and hasn't been back for over a year. Erica, do you want to chime in on that? Maybe that was listed through your publisher, and it seems like you would check with them on that. Or Rachel, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, typically if a book disappears from barnesandnoble.com, it's because the publisher took it down. I have books that I published in, or worked with authors that have been up since like 2008, 2009, and I've never had a problem with them disappearing. But they have to actually physically be removed in order to get off the website.
Is it just not popular enough, or am I not doing enough to keep it there?
No, that's totally not it. It's somehow either there's been a glitch or it's actually been physically removed. If it's been out for a long, I have books that were published in 2017 that haven't sold a single copy in, years, that are still up there. So it's not about sales. It's more so about, who's controlling kind of the listing on the back end.
Yeah, or a glitch in the
Sure.
data, like you said. Sometimes I've heard that you have to push the data through again to get it listed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as far as I know, at least in the store near me, I've not seen copies there. Although I will say, in the beginning, when my book was actually first out, I did see it in the, I want to say the children's poetry, children's poetry section, and then sometime later it was, I saw copies later on in the Minnesota author section. And to be really honest, I'm not sure I was very happy about that, because, and not to dwell too much on this, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, at least in my experience being in Duluth, I feel like it's really hard to market a story unless your story is about the Northland in some way, is about Duluth, because I think it's just the way that tourism works in this city. I found Beavers Pond Press kind of by accident. It was at the a bookstore grand opening party, and they had a vendor there, and that's how I found them in order to publish New Moon's Family. And so yeah, so sometimes I'm starting to feel like, and like when I go to Figures as a local bookstore, you know, when I do see a book in a bookstore, but it's in the Minnesota section, part of me can't help feeling that that's kind of limiting my audience, because I'm not sure how interested people from out of state are going to be, you know, looking for the Minnesota stuff. You know,
I wouldn't, you know, quite honestly, I would be happy to be in the Minnesota section, because that's giving you extra, you know, pull. You're not just on a shelf somewhere in the middle of nowhere. You're actually on a shelf that's being called out because you're a Minnesota author. And so that's actually a good thing. But the key to actually moving those books is offer to go into that bookstore and say, you know, hey, I see my book on your shelf. I'd love to do an event. And you get in there and you do an author event. And even if you know, if you have some friends maybe who haven't bought the book, or people that are new people that you know that didn't know that you were an author before, invite, you know, a couple of them and ask them to bring their friends. And then you're going to make, you know, move some of those books off the shelves, even though it's been there for quite some time. And then hopefully that means that as they see the books are selling, then they'll order in more. And then you can go across the street to Fitkers and try to do something similar there. But yeah, Beaver's Pond, you know, none of the publishing companies, Beaver's Pond included, actually do promotion for you beyond once that book comes out. They get you into the distribution. So, you know, you're in Barnes and Noble, you're in Amazon, but they're not actually out actively promoting your book beyond that. There's no like buyer behind the scenes that's contacting the stores and trying to move things. That falls on you as the author.
Right. It's just that, you know, you know, I'm a Duluth author only in the sense that I live here. You know, my work isn't about Duluth. So I think that's part of where the confusion comes in. But that's just from past experience. I don't know if that's any different now.
No, I would still take advantage of the fact that you're from Duluth and you're an author. So I think it's a good thing. And then if your story is set in Denver or Dallas or whatever, try to see if you can do events in those cities as well. You know, that's another way you can try to expand your reach.
Sure. Yeah. Just for what it's worth, I tend to make my stories, you know, neutral as far as time and setting are concerned. You know, I kind of feel like the opposite is true, but that's just a personal opinion. I will certainly keep in mind what you're saying. I'm not trying to dismiss what you're saying by any means.
Okay, very good. Well, I understand that, you know, you're feeling like you're kind of pigeonholed, but I still see it as a value because it's pulling you off the shelf, off the, you know, main shelf. You're actually getting into a place where you're getting more visibility. But again, it falls on the author to be able to help move those copies and drive some traffic. So maybe that's you doing some social media, letting people know that it's there. Hey, just wanted to remind everybody my book is out there. Hope you'll support it, you know, or it's going to LinkedIn and contributing to some kind of a news group and letting people know that the book is out there. They don't have to buy it at the Duluth store. They can buy it online.
Understood.
Okay, Holly has a good question. Is there a way to stop my MailChimp newsletters from going into people's junk folders?
That I would have no idea. I know that when I do MailChimps, I have about 500 people, I think, on my list. And it seems like I average getting anywhere from 3 to 5 either unsubscribes or bounce backs, but I've never heard of them going into people's junk folders. I get lots of opens, so I'm really not sure why that's happening. Sorry.
Alfred, I see you've got your hand up. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Holly. I'm sorry, I thought I interrupted Holly saying something. Go ahead, Alfred, I see you've got your hand up.
I was just saying thanks. I don't know why either.
Yeah, look it up on Google. Just say MailChimp going into junk folder, why? And if there's other people that are talking about it, maybe you'll find an answer on Google.
Good idea.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. That's my husband's, he's my technical guy, so that's his answer to everything when I ask him why something happened. Why don't you Google that? Like, okay. And
Yep.
99% of the time, there's an answer on Google.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
thanks.
like, I'm having a computer problem. Did you try turning it off? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alfred, go ahead. You've got your hand up. Uh-oh, but wait, you're muted again. Hang on.
There, okay, there. How's that now?
Got it.
Okay, yeah, we think of about writers like J.K. Rowling's and Dinar Kuntz and Suzanne Collins, and these people have done very well. Do you think it's just luck, or do you think it's more than just luck? Literary talent and marketing?
A lot of it has to do with the marketing. Remember, a lot of, pretty much everybody on this call, I think, is either a small press or independently published. You don't have the multi-million-dollar Simon and Schuster behind you pushing the book. So that's what, J.K. Rowling started out. I did actually a PowerPoint for the kids about how many rounds of editing and how many attempts it takes to get your book published. And, J.K. Rowling had a lot of bad luck in the beginning. It took probably, 30, 40, 50 attempts to get published before she finally found Scholastic, and they really put her on the map. But it takes a lot of time, effort, work, persistence. That's kind of the same thing I talked about in the beginning. To build a platform, it takes time, effort, persistence. And so J.K. Rowling is somebody that just continued to write, and submit over and over again. And eventually she connected with the right person. Same with pretty much all the others. But when you have a big publishing company behind you, they're going to be the ones that are taking out that ad that appears in USA Today. They're going to do a commercial on CBS News's morning show. They're going to arrange to get the big authors, those big appearances in Times Square. That is something that's extremely hard for a smaller press published person to do, because you don't have the dollars behind you. You can't buy an ad that costs $25,000, in order to promote your book. So it's just a matter of just continuing to be persistent and, not, looking too big, realizing that there's some things that are currently out of reach. But if you just keep on working at it, sometimes you do get that stroke of luck. I had an author that I worked with who self-published his book initially. It was called 1 Year Lived. Or no, actually, hang on. That's his second title. His first title was called Scratch Beginnings. He basically boarded a bus from his home in North Carolina and just decided to see where $20 would take him. Ended up in South Carolina. And his goal was to prove that he could make the American dream come true in a year. To him, the American dream was owning a car, owning a house, and having $5,000 in the bank. And he successfully did all of that. And
who is this?
What?
Who is this?
Adam Shepard.
Oh, okay.
He wrote a book about it, and he basically on his own got himself onto WNYW television in New York. Somebody from Bantam Books saw that TV interview and purchased his book, and it got re-released by Bantam. And they got him on Good Morning America, and they did all these things with him beyond what he was able to do on his own. But then he realized that he was leaving a lot of money on the table because Bantam all of a sudden owned Scratch Beginnings. So then he self-published his next book, which is called 1 Year Lived. And it was about how he traveled the world on $17,000.
Wow.
And along the way, he met his wife, and he had all these cool adventures all over the world. And he started working with me, and I did all of his promotion. I got him onto the Harry Connick Jr. show. And that just like snowballed for him. He got this amazing speaking career as a result of that. He's making $25,000 every time he gets called in to speak at a university or at a corporate
Jeez.
thing. And that one appearance on Harry Connick Jr. just launched him. And, again, he already had kind of the platform built because he'd been on Good Morning America, and he had another book that was out on Bantam Books. So 1 Year Lived came out about 6 years later, but that Harry Connick Jr. thing is what ended up launching him, really into that speaking career, which is what he wanted to do next. So again, it's all about just kind investing your time, energy, persistence. And Adam, I will tell you, he's probably one of my better paying customers because he spent a lot of hours with me. I worked pretty hard on that campaign, day after day for probably, I think, about 4 months, but it worked.
Wow. Terrific.
All right, we've got about 15 minutes left. Rachel, did we get to the end of your slides
Yep,
or?
I just have one
Okay.
more thing I wanted to share. It's a shameless plug. I kind of introduced it in the beginning. As I mentioned, I have a publishing company called Sigma's Bookshelf. We are a nonprofit publishing company. We exclusively publish the work of teen writers between the ages of 12, 13, and 19. And it's all about empowering kids to have a book in their hand that they wrote. And my son is the one that came up with the idea for the company, but now I run it. So I'm totally loving it. And we are completely grant supported. So any donations that we collect go directly towards expenses. My husband and I don't collect any of the money. It's all basically pumped right back into the company. We have to pay our distribution fees. We have to pay our Adobe Illustrator and design, fees that we have to pay to have that membership for the software. We distribute through Ingram Spark, so we've got that fee, that comes from that as well. And so if anyone is willing to and able to make a donation in any amount, we sure would appreciate it. And we have a direct link to our page at sigmasbookshelf.com/donate. And that takes you right to our GiveMN page. And so it's a tax deductible donation if anyone is willing to help out. And that is it. So now there's my last slide. Any further questions?
Yeah, just one more, if I can. Can we contact you by email? And if we can, what would your email be?
My email is right there up on the screen right now. So
Okay,
it's rachel@rmapublicity.com. And on my website, I have a big catalog of newsletters that I've written over the years. Probably have about 4 or 5 years worth of them up there. You can check out all the different campaigns that I've worked on with clients. And in each of the newsletters on the very last page, I include a publicity and marketing article with recommendations and suggestions on ways to promote, to the media and ways to build your platform and different things like that. So I also have the same articles are pretty much up on the site in the feature article section off the main page. And you can just go to feature articles, click on publicity, and then you can access them there too.
terrific. Wow, yeah. I've got just one more question. With all the work and time that it takes to become an author successfully, would this interfere with your family and personal relationships?
Well, it's really a family affair for me, what I do. My son is in college now, so he's not at home anymore. My husband is kind of my partner in all of this, so he helps me out with the layout and design work for the kid books that we do. And anytime I need help with graphics for my actual clients, he helps me with that. And I work from home, which is kind of cool, so I've got good flexibility. Today I was able to leave work for a while, go run to St. Paul, pick my kid up to vote, and took him out to lunch. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, I love what I'm doing, and the flexibility in a job like, with what I do is fabulous. So I will not trade it. I've already told people, as people have asked me, would you ever go back to corporate? No, I'm done.
Terrific.
Yep. I've been
Terrific.
doing this since 2009 and I love it.
Great. Great.
Can I squeeze in another question?
Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
You love it. I'm glad. That's great to hear that you're loving what you're doing. That's great. I noticed you on your slide, you had Springboard for the Arts. Is that because they have helped fund that?
No, they're what's called my fiscal sponsor. In order to be able to set us up so that people can make donations to us, tax deductible donations, we would need to be a 501c3, which we're not.
Okay.
So a way around that is to have a fiscal sponsor that is a 501c3. So when people make donations to us, the donations actually go to Springboard for the Arts on behalf of Sigma's Bookshelf. And then when we have expenses for our project, then we can submit for reimbursement for the expenses. So that's how that works. So if you look up our GiveMN page, you'll see that it'll specifically say, if you make a donation, it'll say you're making a donation to Springboard for the Arts on behalf, or Sigma's Bookshelf on behalf of Springboard. But the money will actually go into an account at Springboard.
Stephanie, I see your hand up.
Just really curious what your kids that publish the books, are they typically doing fiction, or what kind of books are these kids writing?
They're all fiction, every single one of them. Let's see, I just kind of delete, let's see, if I can, let's see, go back to new share maybe. Let's see, I'll call up my website for you. Let's see. Hopefully I can figure out how to do this. Actually, I should probably shut down the PowerPoint.
That's a very busy home screen.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, wow, geez, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I do a
different.
lot of clipping, so.
A lot of clipping.
Yeah, well, I have an Apple, so I can, when I need images, I can clip them.
Ah, that's great.
All right, so let's see, you are screen sharing. All right, does everyone see Sigma's Bookshelf? Or,
There, yeah, now we do.
okay, there we go. I had to just move it. I work off of 2 screens, so. So Sigma's Bookshelf, we call ourselves, or we did the research. We are the first publishing company exclusively for teen authors. We've brought the work of 15 authors to market since 2017. A lot of our books are actually published or written by 2, co-authored books. And we will be releasing 3, maybe 4 titles in 2022. And so here are the books. So our newest one is called The Elemental Lies, and that's kind of it's about some demons kind of thing. So these kids are going on a trip to Duluth, and then they come across somebody who is from kind of another world and interacts with them. And if you guys are interested in checking out the descriptions, all of them are right here. So what we've done is we've set it up so all of our links go right to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. So that's how we handle our actual sales. So I don't ever sell books direct, except for when I'm at those shows like the festivals or going into the schools and libraries and things. Hostage, this is cool. This one's a Stockholm Syndrome story. A girl gets kidnapped and she falls in love with her kidnapper. Author is 16, okay? This is a trilogy: Demons Ending, Demons Returning. Well, actually, I'll start here. Demons Unfolding, Demons Returning, Demons Ending. This is about a little girl who's actually got magical powers, and the demons kidnap the wrong sister. So they kidnap her little sister, thinking that the sister was the one that had the powers. But it turns out that the other girl did. So she had to go and rescue her sister and then defeat the demons. And then the story continues through generations. So it starts with the girl here, and then the story is about her daughter and about her granddaughter. And so this young lady, she's now a senior in high school. So she's graduating in May. She started when she was 14.
Terrific.
Mystery Mansion, co-authored book. Outcast, this is about a girl who is a musical genius who's writing stories for somebody who is a superstar who used to be her best friend, but when she gets famous, kind of ditches the best friend. And then the girl goes and makes a musical career of her own. And then My Adventure, which is interesting. I had really good luck promoting this one because it's about a kid whose parents don't let her out of the house, and she basically is like trapped, unable to go anywhere outside. This was written pre-COVID, and when everybody kind of got trapped in their houses, I got a lot of attention for this book because it's like, did this kid predict the future? Animal Power is kind of a fantasy about a bunch of kids on a vacation, and then all of a sudden they end up in the Amazon with talking animals. Thrown Spirits is a ghost story. This was, believe it or not, is a bucket list book about a kid who's dying of cancer and has some wishes that his sister helps make happen. And it's actually one of 2 bucket list books we have, some kind of along the cancer theme. This is probably our biggest platform book, Heaven's Note. written by a girl when she was 14. Her parents were in the middle of a divorce and her mom got into trouble with drugs. And so she got taken away and put into the foster system.
Mm,
And eventually the dad got custody back of her. And then she ended up getting treatment and such. And she, as part of her therapy, was urged to write kind of her feelings and what was going through her mind. And she started with her own story, but then transformed it into a novel. And this actually created an entire platform for this young lady, which I think got her into college. In her book, she has a character that's considering suicide. In the end, she gets saved by a school counselor. And I really struggled with this book in the beginning because when it first came in, she actually did have the kid commit suicide. And I said, no, we can't do it that way. We need this to be a good story with a happy ending. So I had her rewrite the ending. And then I also got her school counselor to write a foreword for me about how kids can help a friend who might be struggling and considering suicide. And we've gotten a lot of attention for this book. So this one has just really made a big difference for Kayla. So I'm very proud of her. She's actually got a second book out now too. We didn't publish it, but she self-published her own book.
oh, wow.
Kids are amazing. Some of the stuff that they come up with. Night of the Crown, that's like a murder mystery. Ella's Diaries of Fantasy. There's our other, For Morgan's our other bucket list book. And then this one's a murder mystery. This is a ghost story. This is about a time traveling schizophrenic rabbit.
Yeah.
Another murder mystery. And then my son's novel, Nothing But Trouble, the one that kind of started it all. So you see, that's Sigma. He was a kid who was dying of cancer, and they found a cure for his cancer, but it also transformed him into this lizard-like humanoid creature. So there you have it. So those are all of our books.
So Rachel, do you publish most of what's submitted to you? Do you work extensively with the authors? Do you have to reject a lot?
I've rejected over 100 books. Basically, I'm looking for a story that has a good beginning, middle, and end. And quite honestly, something that's going to be easy for me to edit because I do it all myself. Exactly one of our titles, we had a volunteer who helped us through the process and did the editing work with the kid. But otherwise, every once in a while, I'll get somebody who offers to help. And then they realize, when we tap them, we say, hey, we get to have a book that comes in. Can you review it? All of a sudden, they're not available anymore. So I just kind of said, you know what? I'm just going to do what I can take and what I can handle on, because I do PR on, full time. So I do the book stuff kind of on the side, on the weekends and the evenings and such. So 2-3 titles, I think is, pretty much what I can handle a year. When we first started and my son was actually involved and at home, we did more like 6 or 7 a year in the very beginning. But this year we're going to do 3, maybe 4. So we're in the process of editing number 4. We've got 3 on the market already.
And Michael put in the chat, do you have an in-house artist do the covers?
I do all of the covers with royalty-free imagery, unless the kids actually submit their own art. So going back to the books, this is actually a design that was done by a kid, the best friend of the author. This is a photograph of the actual author that was taken from behind and then just kind of digitized. So the kid actually submitted this. This artwork was done by one of the friends of the author. So if you were to put all 3 of these books together, the mountain actually kind of continues. It's kind of cool. So when you have the 3 of them lined up. This is royalty-free 2 images. I had the hands and then the key. And then, basically we manipulated the text to make it look like that. This is 2 royalty-free images. One was the girl from behind and one was the guitar. 2 royalty-free images, one of a house and one of a tree. Another royalty-free image, royalty-free image, royalty-free image, etc. So basically what we do is we use Pixabay.com. If you guys have never heard of that, it's an amazing resource. All of their material is free. And all they request is that you attribute it to Pixabay.com. So in our copyright page, we just say, imagery courtesy of Pixabay.
Michael, can spell, please. Yeah.
Oh,
Pixicon.
Pixabay. So Pixabay.
Pixa.
P as in Paul, I as in igloo, X as in xylophone, A as in apple, B as in boy, A as in apple, Y as in yogurt.com. Pixabay.
Gee, well,
So this is actually 3 royalty-free images. One is the rabbit, one is the earth, and one is the black hole. So I think it's an amazing resource. And this actually, my son drew this one. And then there's a photograph that we had of a white wall that we found in Minneapolis. And then we just kind of turned it blue with Photoshop. So pretty straightforward. So no, I don't have design capabilities.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Rachel.
You're very welcome. And if anyone does have any questions, feel free to reach out. I do offer free publicity consults, so I'm happy to answer any questions on the phone. And if I'm able to, I can take a call. If not, just leave a voicemail and I'll get back to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
very
I'll
welcome.
leave the room open for a couple minutes in case anybody wants to share any other last thoughts, but thank you so much for your time, Rachel.
Very welcome.